Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 6 for 6. I'm your host, Trevor Williams, and we're going to give you the 6 best games that are going to happen this week, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we are in Season 5, Episode 7, looking pretty solid overall in 6 for 6 thus far. Let's do a quick recap of last week's episode. Last week's episode, we went perfect. Another 6 for 6. I think this is our fourth one in program history. Another unbeaten selection, starting off a very strong season 5, ladies and gentlemen. And with that perfect 6-0 record, improves us to 21-15. What a great way to get season 5 off the ground running. We came back, we were down in the deficit, but now we are on top. The kings of kings at this point going into season 5. So we're making leaps and bounds, doing some impressive stuff. And keep in mind, we have that as well. Also, in other news, I will be having a little 2-week break as I am traveling for work-related, I would say personal-related stuff. So I won't be able to produce a episode of 6 for 6 for the next 2 weeks. So once I'm back, I will be able to produce a episode of 6 for 6 the second week of March going to St. Patrick's Day. So that's what we got going on here for 6 for 6. So you got 2 whole weeks to figure out what to do with yourself. And the best way to spend that time is go checking out our stuff on the Empty the Bench Network, where I have a lot of great colleagues and friends go out and watching their content. So to fill your void, there's still sports to be talked about and games and predictions to be made. Go over there, check them out, give them some love, give them some subscribe love as well. And we'll be on our merry way. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. In the 6th slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have Iowa State, number 6 in the nation, versus BYU, number 23 in the nation. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 21st at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a pretty interesting matchup going between these two schools. From the chances of probability in the last 2 weeks, I mean, they played Houston. Iowa was able to get the victory against Houston. Iowa State was able to get the victory over Houston, 70-67. However, BYU lost to Houston by 11, 77-66. Another common opponent that they played was Baylor, which was 72-69 for Iowa State. But when Baylor played, they won by 5 to 99-94. Then you also have the mix with Kansas when Iowa State dominated Kansas with 74-56 compared to BYU's 90-82. So if you look at that alone, for the comparing similar teams that they played up against, Iowa State is the better team across the board. And other things within the stat lines, I mean, even though BYU shoots more points, they kind of have close margins of victory. Like they had to go into overtime to beat Colorado, ladies and gentlemen. And Iowa State, on the other hand, plays good, solid D. Steals is about 8 steals a game or 9 steals a game to 83.7 points per game. So across the board, it looks phenomenal. From the field, Iowa State shoots better with 51% compared to BYU's 48% from the field. So breaking it all down from the key points of the stats, give me Iowa State to win this matchup. You can catch Iowa State, number 6 in the nation, versus BYU, number 23 in the nation, men's college basketball on Saturday, February 21st, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the 5th slot. We got Kentucky, number 16 in the nation, versus Vanderbilt, number 5 in the nation. Women's college basketball, Sunday, February 22nd, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on the SEC Network Plus, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have that, tune in to check that out. Now, this game, ladies and gentlemen, that we got cooking here is an interesting matchup. Kentucky's been on like this weird losing streak a little bit. They rebound against A&M. They beat Ole Miss convincingly for women's college basketball. But Vanderbilt just lost to Georgia in their last 5 games. But they beat Texas 86-70 compared to when Kentucky played, they lost 64-53, but they lost to Vanderbilt by 1, Kentucky. So what we've seen in the past, when teams get a second chance, do you have the team that won the first time win again, or you split the series? I think this Vanderbilt squad is trying to make a statement and trying to run the SEC, but they got two juggernauts in the way of South Carolina and LSU. So we're going to see how Vanderbilt ends up shaking down and take care of business. But if you look at the points in the field, Vanderbilt is a better squad, and the steals will speak volumes. Like, Vanderbilt's almost averaging 12 steals a game compared to Kentucky's almost 6 steals a game. Points per game, 85 points per game for Vanderbilt compared to Kentucky's 67. And like I said, from the field, it's 47% for Vanderbilt compared to Kentucky's 44%. So that's what we got working here. I like Vanderbilt in this matchup based off a lot of the statistics that I mentioned. It's going to really be prevalent in this matchup this second time around. So you can catch number 16, Kentucky versus number 5, Vanderbilt women's college basketball, Sunday, February 22nd, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on ESPN+. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, and the fourth slot, we got Michigan State, number 18 in the nation, versus Minnesota, number 23 in the nation. Women's college basketball, Sunday, February 22nd, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time on FS1, ladies and gentlemen. Michigan State coming off of a tough loss to Michigan. 2 in a row losses. They lost to UCLA, not looking pretty. But Minnesota's on a nice, solid 5-game win streak, beating Purdue, beating Iowa, beating Rutgers, beating Nebraska, and beating Wisconsin. Now, from the field, relatively close. Like, the stats favor Michigan State better, but Michigan State have just been having very cold games in the last 5 games. Like, the margin is not close. Like, there's significant gaps. And on the other hand, when you look at Minnesota, they're having significant wins margins as well. So I think even if we throw out the stats and looking at the last 5 games, there's momentum going in Minnesota. And I think Minnesota is going to about to pull up the upset against Michigan State. And if you just look at the conference record, Minnesota's 11-4 in Big Ten play compared to Michigan State's 6-9 in Big Ten play. So I think that momentum is going to continue to build for Minnesota, and they're starting to get hot at the right time as we start ramping up into conference tournament play relatively soon. So you can catch Michigan State, number 18 in the nation, versus Minnesota, number 23 in the nation. Women's college basketball, Sunday, February 22nd, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time on FS1, and I have Minnesota winning it. In the third slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have Michigan, number 6 in the nation, versus Iowa, number 13 in the nation. Women's college basketball, February 22nd, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. Michigan trying to keep their momentum going, beating off their arch rival twice, but the second time in a convincing manner. They beat Nebraska in the last 5 games relatively convincingly, but they lost to UCLA by 3. But when Iowa played UCLA, they got blown out. So I think that momentum's going. I think this Michigan women's team is trying to make a good shot at the conference title, and if not, possibly a shot at the national championship during March Madness. Getting through the SEC is not an easy task, but these Wolverine women have a capability of doing something special to get through the goal line. I hate to say me that they're doing well as being an Ohio State fan, but you got to show respect. Respect is due when your team is out there hooping, whether I like it or not. So, again, margin of victory, it's just that momentum that this Wolverines team has. Like, they're averaging about 87 points per game compared to Iowa's 80 points per game. From the field is relatively close, 48% for Michigan, 49% for Iowa. Steals, again, almost 12 steals a game for Michigan compared to Iowa's 8 steals. So those steal margins are going to be a key factor in this game, depending on how this goes. And as well as rebounding and boxing out is another key fundamental in basketball. However, I think Michigan will take care of business and get the dub and continue their great campaign of being dominant in the Big Ten. Even though Iowa's only 11-3 in the Big Ten, Michigan's 13-2 in the Big Ten. So give me the victory for Michigan in this one, ladies and gentlemen. So you can catch number 6 Michigan versus number 13 Iowa women's college basketball, Sunday, February 22nd, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. And I have Michigan winning it. Now we roll into the number 2 slot, ladies and gentlemen. We have Arizona, number 4 in the nation, versus Houston, number 2 in the nation. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 21st, 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon Pacific time on ABC, ladies and gentlemen. The heavyweight of Arizona starting to slip, but you look at their last 5 games. Yes, they're beating teams convincing like Oklahoma State and Arizona State and BYU, but only beating BYU by 3. However, when Houston played BYU, they won by 11, 77-66. So that is a key point that we have to hone in on, ladies and gentlemen. That margin, something's happened. Like, yes, having that undefeated streak was very difficult to manage. Yes, they have a great overall points per game with 88 points per game compared to Houston's 77. Shooting great from the field for Arizona with 51% compared to Houston's 45% from the field. But steals are the same, about 8 steals per game, and almost blocks are relatively same with 4.5 for Arizona and almost 4 for Houston. So again, a very close margin that we're dealing with, but it all comes down to momentum. And I think Houston has the right momentum going into this game after having a great tough, I would say not a great 4-stretch game run, but with a tough loss to Iowa State and losing by 3, I think they can easily switch it around. But Arizona coming off a heartbreak loss in OT, losing by 3 to Texas Tech, 78-75. Again, we got a great game in our hands, so you should definitely tune in. I think Houston is going to try to prove to the world that they are a good number 2 in the nation by knocking off Arizona slightly a little bit further and trying to secure a good seat going into conference play soon. So you can catch number 4 Arizona versus number 2 in the nation, Houston, men's college basketball, Saturday, February 21st, 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon Pacific time on ABC. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the game of the week. Michigan, the Michigan men, number 1 in the nation versus Duke men. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 21st. 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a gauntlet to get through. We have the mindset of the new Crownly Maize and Blue. The Golden Inn of Michigan has returned from what they have going on with their football program, but their basketball team is going to try to rebound and take down the Duke Blue Devils with a basketball blue blood that Duke is. Now, you can't use the games to help you figure out to formulate, but Michigan knocking off Purdue 91-80 is a huge, significant milestone. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, it was at Purdue. Now, Duke, on the other hand, losing to North Carolina in heartbreaking fashion, 71-68, but they've been on a campaign. They've been bullying teams. They beat up Pitt 70-54. They've been bullying Clemson 67-54, and they just dominated Syracuse 101-64. Michigan's kind of been doing the same thing. So we got 2 freight trains colliding with each other, ladies and gentlemen. The magnitude of this game, the pressure from the field, about 51% for Michigan and 50% for Duke, ladies and gentlemen. So we got a great magnitude. And I think Duke is going to slay this number 1 team in the nation down, and it will go to make Duke possibly the new number 1 team in the nation, or if Houston has the way to destroy Arizona. Very interesting things will go down. Duke just has to win, take care of business, and hopefully dominoes fall in their place and Arizona can get back on track, and we could have Duke as being the best team in the nation yet again. But we'll have to find out on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. And 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN, and I have Duke winning it. Let's get you a quick recap, and we'll get you on out of here so you can enjoy your week of college basketball. In the 6th slot, ladies and gentlemen, Iowa State, number 6 in the nation, versus number 23 in the nation, BYU. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 21st, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN. And I have Iowa State winning this matchup. In the 5th slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have number 16 Kentucky versus number 5 Vanderbilt. Women's college basketball, February 22nd, 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon Pacific time on the SEC Network Plus. From there, and I have Vanderbilt winning it. And the fourth slot, we have Michigan State, number 18 in the nation, versus Minnesota, number 23 in the nation. Women's college basketball, February 22nd, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time on FS1, and I have Minnesota winning this matchup. In the third slot, we have Michigan, number 6 in the nation, versus Iowa, number 13 in the nation. Women's college basketball on Sunday, February 22nd, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. And I have Michigan winning this matchup. Number 2, ladies and gentlemen, we have Arizona, number 4 in the nation, versus Houston. Men's college basketball, Houston, who's number 2 in the nation. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 21st, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on ABC. And I have Houston winning this matchup. And then the number 1 team in the nation, Michigan. Number 1 team in the nation versus Duke. Men's college basketball, February 21st at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. And I have Duke winning this matchup. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a great way to roll into Season 5. We are 21-15, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, our last week episode, we went the perfect 6-0, ladies and gentlemen, in our correct pick. So that is fantastic to have within the first 7 episodes of 6 for 6. So we're looking pretty good if you ask me. And like I said, we're going to be on a 2-week break as I have personal things I need to take care of in the next 2 weeks. So the second week of March, right, rolling our way into St. Patrick's Day weekend and all that stuff, we'll have another episode of 6 for 6 as we get, like I said, leading our way into March Madness to make sure we are set up and ready to go for our picks and selections for that time and making sure 6 for 6 gets all that viewership and love and support. So thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of 6 for 6, and we'll catch you next time on 6 for 6. So long for now. Bye-bye.